93 years ago, this week in February 1928, one of Wales' most successful and famous actors, Stanley Baker, was born in Ferndale. This here video is not about Baker as such, but the man and some of his contradictions sit at the centre of this inquiry into what will always be regarded as his finest hour, and the film for which he's best known at home and abroad. It's a film whose ethics are split down enough into sections that analysing my own feelings towards it splits my brain into, well, sections. In the wake of Black Lives Matter and the demand for a deeper critical analysis of imperialism, together with rising Welsh nationalism in the UK and a need to explore Wales' complicated relations with colonial structures, I feel it's time to look at maybe the biggest ever colour movie to carry a significant Welsh element, because no matter how many times I watch it, no matter which of its cultural idents I empathise with, I just can't decide how I feel about Stanley Baker and Cy Enfield's epic war film, Zulu. So Zulu is the go-to reference for many when asked to name a Welsh film, but its Welshness is just one of the many areas which can be debated from different perspectives. In this vid, you'll notice I'm going to use words like but, yet, although, and however quite frequently, as this film seems to confound the modern social media habit of placing everything and everyone at absolute extremes of a spectrum. Creatively, Zulu was born from a magazine article by a communist historian, John Preble, which became the brainchild of American screenwriter Cy Enfield, who read about the Battle of Rorke's Drift, and then he took his idea for a movie adaptation to his friend Baker, who was at that time moving into film production after establishing himself as an actor. It was Baker who suggested that the 2nd Regiment of Foot be changed to the South Wales Borderers. This decision formed some of the film's aesthetic, particularly the choir battle, but also the gravitas and credibility lent by Richard Burton's narrative presence.
Her Majesty's forces in Natal Colony, South Africa. I regret to report a very disastrous engagement which took place on the morning of the 22nd January between the armies of the Zulu king, Ketchewea.
In the real life, this division of the British Army was not Welsh but English, and normally it's the other way around. Welsh stories and characters get changed into generic British or Irish characters, and if we did ever get Welshmen in films, they were cowards or layabouts. Years before watching Zulu, growing up as a British and pro-British kid, I remember being aware of it and proud of it. So from my perspective here, these days, this is inaccurate history, but still delightful to see Welsh people represented in a more dignified and proactive manner.
This is a Welsh regiment, man.
Is Zulu ethically anything to be proud of, though? To explore that question, first I'm looking at Stanley Baker and his contradictions. So Baker was the son of a miner, a committed socialist who did party political broadcasts on TV for the Labour Party. He was also a multi-millionaire who sent his kids to English public schools, a potential tax exile, and an ardent anti-Welsh nationalist, quoted in 1969 as saying, "I'm a Welshman and proud of it, but I'm no nationalist. I think Welsh nationalists are fools and misguided people." Okay. These sentiments, in a Welsh context, even in 1969, hint at a deeper, more banal British supremacism, over Wales at least, and assert British, which is really English, authority as sacrosanct. Now, if Stanley Baker felt such things about his own country, or countries, he surely could have felt it about the Zulu kingdom in different or alternative transactional circumstances. But the idea that Baker or the film Zulu is racist is a nonsense. We need to be more nuanced in our analysis than that. Filmed in the Natal province in the midst of apartheid, Baker and his crew refused instruction not to mix with the black actors, and Baker himself struck up a close friendship with Mangosuthu Gacha Buthelezi, a man with his own inherent contradictions. He was founder of the Inkatha Freedom Party, but also a royalist and perhaps imperialist sympathiser, who was in fact in this film playing his own grandfather, King Ketchewea. Now, what I meant before by transactional circumstances and transactional analysis is that these Africans, the extras and the nobles of their hierarchy were making a film for Baker and he needed them. If their transactions had been on a different or more equal footing, at what stage would their struggle for agency become one for misguided fools and nationalists? As we are seeing in the 21st century, English sovereignty over any country, even its close neighbours, is becoming harder to justify from a socialist perspective, and such a stance is, in itself, nationalism, just of a different nation, the one with the empire, the strength, wealth and culture of conquest.
The Welshman did good service in a garden where leeks did grow, wearing leeks in a Monmouth cartridge as your
Many a
Majesty
proud
will.
Welshman and self-labelled socialist insisting that Wales can only be dignified in a UK context and doffing their caps to empire is one of the reasons why I've never fully warmed to the man Stanley Baker or his finest hour on film. Something I find remarkable in Britain is the way a proud UK identity is so entwined with military warfare, and how, furthermore, the type of films we make tend to be when the Brits are underdogs, the plucky few under attack.
England is under threat of invasion, and though we be on the far side of the world, this ship is our home.
In my experience, this is as much of a problem with those on the left wing as those on the political right wing. Through the history of movies, even this one, you'd never know that the Brits invaded and occupied half the world for nearly 500 years, leaving physical and mental scars on land and peoples wherever they left.
The German war machine is rolling up the map of Europe. Country after country falling like dominoes. Nothing can stop it. Until one tiny, damp little island says no. A mouse in front of a lion. Off you go then. Save the world.
These contradictions, and some would say hypocrisies, of left-wing creatives is rarely more evident than Zulu. It has been claimed, with some justification it must be said, that the film, or the tone of the film, is anti-war. And even though that is one credible reaction to it, I'm not sure it's as clear-cut as this. We need to have the confidence to critique films and works such as this on their own terms and merits, rather than how we want to see it, or how we want anyone else to see it. It's absolutely fair, gotta be, to say that the Zulu army are not portrayed negatively. In fact, it could be claimed equally that the film is an homage to the spirit and nobility of both sets of soldiers. There are moments in the script which may hint to a sentiment that perhaps we shouldn't have been in Africa. I mean, there are no bad guys or there are no good guys in the film. In fact, one of the film's many strengths is that it refuses to conform to the good guy, bad guy paradigm, like many of the westerns which inspired it, even down to the individual relationships within the story. But that's not the same thing as being anti-war, more like ambivalent. There are script moments which directly challenge bigotry and racism, but there are no speaking roles for black actors in the film, save a couple of lines in the early scenes from Buthelezi, which are so nominal they don't even require subtitles. One of the early beats sees a Zulu warrior kill a comrade for a harmless indiscretion, hinting at an alien savagery similar to this moment from another colonial reflection released 2 years earlier. Were Enfield and Baker intent on making a truly anti-war movie, it's notable that, again, they choose a moment when the Brits are under attack by a greater force and to tell their story from a white British perspective. The British Army returned to Natal after the Battle of Rorke's Drift and were merciless in their revenge. The world's first concentration camps were built here within 10 years of this battle by the British. I feel a truly anti-war or anti-colonial piece would at least hint at these truths. Considering all these points, I understand how Paul Verhoeven was able to get away with his treatment of Robert Heinlein's novel Starship Troopers, which, like Zulu, would not be allowed to be made today. By satirising these white colonial tropes through subversive sci-fi and therefore not as close to the home bone, Verhoeven is bold enough to depict human colonisers as aggressors, even in their role as protagonists.
Some say the bugs were provoked by the intrusion of humans into their natural habitat, that a live and let live policy is preferable to war with the bugs.
Let me tell you something. I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all! Yeah!
Something Cy Enfield's script could be perhaps interpreted as doing, but only by stretching notions of objectivity.
Can't you see? You're all going to die!
Yet despite all this, what a fucking film. Like The Lovable Rogue, there's just something about Zulu that makes it impossible not to like. Is it the lack of the cliche characterization, emotional restraint and detachment, the crisp and epic cinematography, or John Barry's best ever theme tune? I mean, take your pick, like. But for a classic film from the 60s on Blu-ray, it's right up there with the most gripped you can be these days in front of a big screen TV. Now, I'm not a cinematography junkie, but I cannot think of a movie whose visuals I want to drink in as much as this. I mean, look at it. Even the costumes and makeup add to a feeling of claustrophobia, yet within a vast and open terrain. The red coats contrasted against the blue sky, and the Ukalamba, or Drakensberg, mountain are like a visual and rich condiment to your meal. It's probably my favourite ever Blu-ray print. Just glorious. Now, I'm a white, middle-class, heterosexual, cisgender man born in the 1970s. I don't claim to speak for others, the Afro-Welsh or the Afro-Brits, for example. My insight into the world of social justice warriorism comes only really from my involvement in the Welsh national movement and the bigotry I find towards it. My attention deficit disorder also maybe creates some caution towards certain absolutisms, and maybe that has prevented me taking a firm stance on Zulu. But I'd be interested to learn how individuals at certain intersections read Zulu.
That's pretty. Look. Come on. Here goes. Come on, just a little kiss, eh?
I believe totally in the purpose of political correctness. Yet, some aspects of modern intolerance of the previously normal I do find problematic. I'm sure opinions such as this will bring out the trolls and the don't cancel our history brigade and the don't be ashamed of our past crew. But that's not the point. I am not ashamed of how British or Welsh people behaved before I was born, but that's because I'm willing to accept or reject other interpretations which don't always sit comfortably with my narrative. It's how we react to, discuss and process these histories now which is important. In simpler terms, I don't judge my grandparents for accepting Winston Churchill back in 1942, but I will judge those who want to see his face on a £5 note in 2021. I don't take issue with those who erect a statue of a murderous slave owner back in 1850, but I want to see, in 2021, any statues of these cunts ripped down in as visible way as possible. Zulu is a film which does the thing Wales needs most and which I love. It injects Welshness into a major historical action film, yet does so in a way Wales needs least and that I detest. This Welshness only counts in the service of the British Empire and its unsentient, domineering entitlement.
Why, this country's not a bit as good as Bala and the lake there.
It's a film which laments the futility of war, then celebrates soldiers who win royalist medals, asserts Welsh bravery, but in a way which sees the abused maybe becoming the abuser. It's a film produced by a socialist who sent his kids to school with the establishment, who was proud of his country but hated nationalism. A film which depicts British underdogs bravely defending themselves against honourable and capable black power in a land we had invaded and which still carries those scars to this day. It's a film I admire, a film I resent, which does the same thing to my analytical brain as white colonisers have done to Africa for 500 years or more. Splintered. In our polarised communication world of gammons and snowflakes, perhaps some films are opportunities for education and to help us find our own positions on that spectrum. Perhaps continual, honest vigilance in revisiting works such as this is what's important, rather than cancelling or championing them. For that reason, maybe it's a good thing that in 2021 I still just don't know how to read Zulu.